Well, yeah, I mean,
So Tara had a family emergency. So,
I just found out
and
today.
we found out this morning. So she can't appear via Zoom or in person, obviously. We wish her well, but I think staff and I are prepared to kind of work through Division 40, which is where we left off at the last workshop. And she said she rewatched this. We can talk with her after, and she can always appear at the next one, but there's no point of slowing down the process.
let's agree on that. Okay, so do we have anything? I know previously we were given, I guess, some paperwork that had at least on the other part, on the overlay, that had,
Like strike through.
yes, strike-throughs. We have those for today too, or?
It was part of the agenda. I don't know if you guys have that on the workshop or on the iPad.
Excuse me just a moment. We've got somebody new running the meeting in the back, so I just want to make sure that the meeting's called to order and we're
Oh.
going.
Okay,
Okay,
how's that?
thank you.
Well, I can't even get my computer to come up here. I just got a blank screen and I don't know what's going on.
I have mine printed out. Do you want to use
Sure.
my tablet?
I mean, if we can, or do you have yours like that?
I have
Okay.
it printed out.
I see.
Or would you prefer to work from
No,
paper?
no, this is fine. That's fine. We do it.
And then, Ginny, even though it's a workshop, do you mind doing roll call real quick?
I will.
Thank you.
Member Hurley?
Present.
Member Young?
Present.
Member Hawkinsmith?
Present.
Member Dashiell?
Present.
Chair Lowry?
Present.
We have a quorum, thank you.
The plug is out.
Little light was flashing. I pressed the button, the green light would come on.
I sabotaged your iPad.
It's modern technology.
Bit of fresh.
I mean, if it doesn't,
Tons of things back here.
Not only that, I can always use the overhead.
yeah.
I can share mine.
Well, I have this, I mean, I already have a, thanks to Tia. It's dead anyway, it's not even, yeah. Don't worry, I can look at this, we're okay. Thank you. I don't get to look at yours.
Okay, so just to recap, we got through all of Division 20, and we are on Division 40, which is the CRDEA. If you can tell, the track changes don't start until, so right now, nothing that's proposed currently in the CRDEA is being changed. What Tara did was actually add some things based on our workshops and conversations that the board would like to see. First one being 40.113, which is the lot splits or assembly of parcels. As you know, things in the Paso Grow overlay Division 20 talks about going to the commission if for a character, right? Character of the surrounding neighborhood. And this is one of those things where the board's made clear that, you know, who know better than the character than the Historic Preservation Board. So she did add it in 40.13, and if Kristen would be so kind. I wanted to show you a lot split process that the prior city manager, wow, that's gonna be difficult. But it's the best we could print. The prior city manager put together on how these things would work. Now, if we could just zoom in a lot to the left and then maybe work our way across. Don't know if that is possible. Thank you, Kristen. There we go. So this is a paradigm, and it kind of allows the city manager to understand when certain things go where, if they need commission approval, so on and so forth. Now, this is a little bit different than Division 40, but if this is something similar that the board would want in the overlay itself, when it talks about lot splits, that's something that we could propose to Tara, and she could include. So essentially, the request comes in. You realtors probably know, you're dealing with previously platted lots, and if that's the case, and all you're doing is either combining two pre-platted lots or subdividing lots that may have been put together and subdividing them into previously platted, it's a whole different circumstance. So if they were not, then the answer is you have to go through a subdivision process, which is pursuant to statute, city commission. There's a whole set of codes. You would need to replat the property, so on and so forth. If they were previously plotted, then you move up to the yes. And then you're looking at underlying zoning minimum size lot requirements, right? So every lot has a minimum size that you can build a single family home on, or multifamily, so on and so forth. And if the answer is yes, then you point to the code. You always have to determine whether the lot's vacant or if there's a structure on it, because staff is making sure that what you're building is in compliance with setbacks, things of that nature. So essentially what people do is sometimes they combine lots and then all of a sudden they want minimal setbacks on each, and so it gives us an opportunity to review these things. And if the lots are vacant, then the city manager currently has the ability to approve or deny it administratively via 24.4, which is something that doesn't happen often, but I have seen lot splits and lot combinations come up before. Now, if it doesn't meet the minimum lot requirement, which you can imagine in the overlay and in Passive Grow happens from time to time, you have to answer whether or not it's in the overlay itself. And if it isn't, then they can't lot split. And if it is, then again, you have to determine if it meets the minimum lot requirement. And then Kristen, if you could move this a little bit more to the right, it eventually will end up in front of the commission for a character review. There's no criteria. It really just is up to the commission on whether or not it meets the character.
Well, to simplify matters, I think, and before we get started here on a lot of this stuff, I think one of the things we talked about in the past, and I think Tara has looked into that, or and just so I'm clear, what this 40.14, that's just a whole new section, right? Because it normally ends at 40.13.
It ends at 1.2.
Okay.
So and everything after that in blue is brand new.
Yes, okay, so what I'm saying is, all right, so we had talked at some point, and I think it's really important that this is a priority before we do all this stuff, is that we get everything under the pastoral overlay and not have underlying zones. And if we do that, then it's really this rebus here, or whatever this is a straight line. It would just be, it goes to us for advice, and then it goes to the commission. So we don't have to worry about all the rest of that stuff. If it's in the historic district, the pastoral overlay applies, and therefore it comes to us, and then we, it's going to happen very rarely. But as you know, the problems we have now is when you have a lot like this guy we're going to hear this afternoon, whose lot is too small for the underlying zone, so he has to do it under the overlay.
Well, that's quasi-judicial. I wouldn't talk about.
Okay, well, no, I meant you're just using that as an example.
Hypothetically, yeah.
Yes, as an example. So if we are trying to eliminate confusion as to how we're doing stuff down there, and eliminating choices and trying to keep everything pretty straightforward, then shouldn't we kind of wait on this until we can determine whether the commission is going to allow us to just have everything under the overlay?
It's not a bad point. There's just a lot of work that's been going into this, so I don't know if Jennifer wants to speak on how this will be presented. I was thinking that it would be an ordinance rewrite, and then maybe some kind of executive summary from the board or something kind of clarifying all together.
And just so you understand, I totally appreciate what you're trying to do, is to get us in the mix on some of these things, and that's great. But if the historic district is all part of the overlay, then we've eliminated all those little spurs on the side, and we can just say, it's a lot split in the historic district. Well, then the historic board has to look at it to determine, to give some advice, and I think that eliminates lots of confusion on everything down the line when we talk about other stuff in the future here. And I'm making an assumption here that the board here agrees that that's kind of, because we've talked about it enough and no one's said they didn't want to do that, that we all agree that to eliminate confusion, everything should be under the overlay. Instead of, you know, then we don't have all these problems when we get to see one, when we don't get to see one, does a person, you know, overlay has language about historic buildings and scale, the underlying zone does not, so there's always these built-in conflicts for staff as well. And part of that we talked about before is cleaning up the zoning maps to make sure everything is part of the overlay, because we haven't had an updated one, even though we know the current one we've seen isn't quite correct on some of the things. And then also making sure that everything south of 32nd is part of the historic district, which we seem to be spinning our wheels over and over on that too, because it seems like it's been done, but it hasn't been done. So it just seems to me, before we do all these things to take care of these little things, that the two primary things we do is have to make the historic district, everything south of 32nd, everything, not taking bits and pieces out, and make everything part of the overlay. And if I think we go to the commission all at one time with that information and our suggestions to change the CRD or the overlay, we're doing it in the right order. You know, that we get this done, then this done. And, you know,
I guess my point of view is, if the overlay language, if you are okay, just assume that everything is under the overlay.
okay,
And you review the overlay language and you're okay with it,
yeah,
then move forward with the overlay language,
yeah,
right? Because then at some later date, and you guys have all been following the commission, I mean, getting something on the commission agenda right now, like a discussion on, hey, let's expand the historic district, I'm just worried that won't happen for months.
okay. Well, I think that's simpler. I
Right.
think everybody can simply say, yeah, we already thought it was in the historic
Yeah.
district. So I think it's actually probably simpler, number one. But number two, the biggest problems we have down there is that you don't know the different choices that can be made. And if we keep pushing that along, you know, where, okay, well, this person decides, because the overlay is voluntary. And because it's voluntary, it means we don't have any, you know, we don't have a say, so the city doesn't have a say, so it's up to the individual home builder to decide. And so then we're off on, you know, as you know, we've only been, in the past, shown the overlay ones at y'all's discretion, but you have, and you decide to add the other ones. But my God, if it's gonna be a historic district, why aren't we involved with everything that's not a big area? And so it just seems to me that to start cleaning it up, you gotta clean it up at its base level, which is, why have these choices? Why do we have to do the extra time? It's very time consuming for everybody to decide which is which and which is not, and it creates animosity with people, you know, oh, look, they're building this house, we never saw that, how's this an historic house, you know, whatever. And if we just had some clarity, I think, and I don't know how the commission's feeling about it, but I think most people already believe everything south of the Don is the historic district, and I think most people already believe the historic board is involved with every home that's built down there, and they're not. But I think the citizens think that, because I think most people would say, well, why do you have a choice? Why is there two reasons? Why is the overlay voluntary? Because you know what happens, I'm sorry, you get people who build a huge house, and it essentially looks like under the underlying zone, but they've taken advantage of the overlay to get more setbacks to get a bigger house. So the whole spirit of making a historic house look like, you know, under the overlay, make it look like these other houses, and they just build a regular house, and they get better setbacks, so they can build a bigger house on there. So I just think there's just too much loopholes that, and I don't know, I don't do any of the talking here, but it seems to me that's just a matter of the first step of clarifying this. It makes everything simpler on down the line. And I don't know what the downside of it is, unless you think it's going to take a while to get in front of the commission. I think the commission is going to spend more time going over how we change every ordinance than they are about just the overall, having the historic district be everything south 32nd, yeah, I'm
They
not-
may, the only thing sorry, and Lynn can speak too, the thought is everything south is the historic district, but if there's no actual proof that we went through what the code requires, then it's gonna be my opinion that we have to do what the code requires, which is notices, multiple public hearings, informing property owners, a bunch of things that you have to do to expand the historic district, which takes time,
Okay.
right? That in itself takes months to do. And then the commission would approve it, and then the district would be expanded, but that's how I'm operating, is I haven't seen anything to prove that we went through the steps that our code requires, or anything showing me that it is all of south, south. So that's kind of where I'm coming from, is that,
I know,
Yeah.
I understand exactly what you're saying, because it does seem to be, the record doesn't seem to be clear about that. I mean, there's aspects where it looks like that's what the decision was, but but a big part of it is the map, because the map will say this is zone so-and-so / PAG. And then we say, well, that means it's part of the overlay. And then there's a couple parts that don't say / PAG. And it's like, was there ever really a decision where somebody said this should be not part of the overlay? Or did the map maker just mess it up? Because recall, institutional, the old, whatever you call it.
AMI Kids,
Yes. You know what I'm talking about?
what was that?
the AMI Kids facility had 2 buildable lots, just
Oh, the old one down.
Right.
Yeah, this is
Yeah,
the
yeah.
30th, okay? And that under the zoning is still institutional, not / PAG, not ROR, not anything. So I don't think you can even build houses there, but it's being sold that way, and apparently it's okay to do that because someone at one of these previous meetings said the map was incorrect. Where does that come from? You know, so I just don't know, can we just go change the maps and put / PAG after everything?
Well, I think if you focus on the overlay, so this is twofold, right? One point is expanding the historic district. Another point is expanding the overlay, right? Or is the board's decision that you want it to be one and the same?
Yes.
I think
One and the same.
that's what
So the
he's-
historic district should be everything south, and everything south of that should also be the overlay.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah, well-
not Vena, but in, right,
But, yeah, there should be language about Paso Grow overlay. It was done during the time of, Mike was here, the city manager,
Bonfield.
Bonfield. It was done at that time, and it was supposedly, he didn't want to do spot zoning. So he said that the way to do it would be to create an overlay, so if anything ever happened to the structures in Paso Grow, that they would be able to go back the way they were under the, whatever the day that they took the picture more or less of, and called it the overlay.
Because if that's the point, because what's in front of you now, Division 20, and once you make changes, you can't update the map based on what you're doing in the ordinance without actually expanding the historic district. All right, so you can.
Can or you cannot?
You can expand the map. So that's why I'm kind of saying, if we stay focused on what we're doing, you may end up in a position that's better off, because now not only are you controlling new developments under the overlay, right, and putting some kind of restrictions or whatever Tara and I come up with, but you're also creating an updated map of the overlay, which you can then turn at a later date to use to expand the historic district.
okay, but.
Does that make sense?
Well, except for don't we have the same problems that you were just talking about notifying everybody and stuff, that's not under the overlay right now?
The way that ordinances are adopted are pursuant to statute, and yes, everyone gets notice, 2 public hearings. The difference with expanding the historic district is our code requires a very stringent process that we have to abide by, because there is no statute, right? So we have to default to our code
Okay.
on the historic district area.
Okay, but can we, in our overlay that we have, our ordinances in the overlay that we're working on, can we put in there that everything in the historic district is under the auspices of this overlay? And right, just then eliminate the underlying zone as a choice?
So, in turn, if you create a new map of the overlay that encompasses the historic district currently, then it's already within the overlay. Right? You don't have to put language in there saying, like, once you expand the map enough and include everything that you want south of 32nd, then all of those properties will be in the overlay.
Okay, so how do we change the map?
Adopting a new ordinance. And maybe a map change. Right? This is all things that can happen via 2 readings and advertisement and at the city commission based on what you're doing now, though. Right? You get the language nailed down. We talk to Tara, we talk to staff. We develop an updated map as well, which has to be advertised a certain way. And then you just focus on the overlay for now.
Right. Okay, I think I understand what you're saying. If you understand what we're saying, I mean, you know.
I do, and I'm just hoping I'm being clear, but I just think that the biggest issue right now, even if the historic district was expanded and you guys were seeing all these things, nothing in the code really gives you the ability to do much, right? But if you focus on the overlay,
Oh, I agree.
and you start preventing people from potentially getting a choice or doing, you're going to see more effect with the overlay language than you are with expanding the historic district.
No, okay, I understand what you're saying, and I think we're killing the same thing just
Yeah.
differently. Okay, I just thought it'd be simpler, so we can notify the people about about making everything part of the overlay.
Correct.
We have to do that anyway.
Correct.
And then after we've done that, then we go to make, all right, I think that makes sense, especially because I think a lot of people believe that anyhow, but. Okay, I'm sorry, Lynn, you've been
No,
standing there for a long time.
I just wanted to interject that if you want to change the historic district boundaries, the National Register district boundaries, that would have to be approved by the state and the National Park
Yeah,
Service.
no, I'm talking about the local one, not the
Okay.
national one. Because we've already got issues, there's already, the national one's way behind the local one right now.
Just wanted to be sure that was
Yeah,
clear.
no, yeah,
Not only that, you may want to wait. We have a grant that Lynn was so gracious to get the city. We have an RFP going out for
I know.
survey work. I mean, this district may expand way more than you've even thought of.
Yeah, I get that, but I would say this, and just not to throw another wrench in there. Let's say the Don Cesar Place can come up for, historic district. I think if that ultimately happens, we need to treat that as a separate historic district than the Paso Grill Historic District because of its.
Very different
there's
characteristics.
Very different characteristics. So we have different rules for that and not, it's just like if Corey Avenue becomes a historic district. It's just, there's no residences on Corey Avenue, basically. Paso Grill has residences and commercial establishments. Don Cesar Place just has residences. So there's a lot of different character that I don't think you want to group under the same thing. But that might be a time frame when we'd want to get in front of the commission to say, for the historic district.
But I guess to that point, then how does the board think expanding the overlay, encompassing an area like that, with restrictions that you're saying would be different?
You're talking about Paso Grill right now.
Talking about,
Don Cesar Place?
yeah.
Well, it would just be, I don't know, you'd have to have a study and say, these are the homes, the Don Cesar Place are mainly mid-century modern homes, so-and-so. When you're talking about new builds there, there'd be more, maybe the design book would be different than the design book that you have in the Paso Grill overlay. All right, because we're talking about doing that. That might make some sense, but secondarily, you don't need I guess you could ignore the language, but you don't need all the language talking about the CRD and retail, residential over retail and all that kind of stuff. So you might have a different height requirements because typically, I don't know. I'm just saying it's just a different animal.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think this through, because if you want everything to be part of the overlay and that's the only choice you get.
In Paso Grill,
Okay.
then you'd have a Don Cesar overlay. Then you'd have a Corey Avenue overlay or whatever. But again, if you want to use that term overlay, I don't know. I mean, like I said, if you're changing an area into a historic district, then there should be a set of rules for that historic district, which is what we don't have in Paso Grill right now. We have 2 sets of rules.
And exceptions to all of them. So wouldn't it just be Paso Grill District and then do perhaps like Don Vista District or something like that? Just
Yeah.
help keep it.
No, I think I think you could do it like that. I mean, I think when they use the term overlay, I'm guessing I wasn't around for that because it had two choices. This area, it's this, or you have the overlay, take your pick, I guess. I don't know. I never really understood why they did that.
My concern with the language with the new proposed is that we're using the word overlay, and it seems like we're trying to take away that term overlay. So then, does this become redundant, or non-applicable anymore, and then we have to start over again with a rewriting that doesn't reference overlay.
Right, like we call it the pass-the-grille district as opposed to overlay. I don't know. I think that's semantics, and we have to clean it up at some point, but, you know,
I mean, the whole purpose of an overlay, though, is every overlay has at least from my experience, has an underlying zoning district.
right.
It's like a big net.
It's like a big net over multiple zoning districts.
Nets inside.
Correct.
Yes. But we
So to have someone only do the overlay and not the underlying, you're right, you'd have to call it, I mean, it's almost like a new zoning district.
Right. But our net now has a lot of holes in it.
Yeah, which, I mean, this at least is a step in the right direction.
Yeah.
So yeah, I just wanted to lay out what we currently have with
Yes.
lot splits.
And
but-
the reason I said this a lot, but let me just point this out again, why I think that's important about, because the overlay, as it's written now, has a lot of language about scale and history and compatibility, whereas the underlying zones have none of that. So that's why we need to have that kind of language and why the overlay makes sense. Okay, so after all that,
So yeah, I'll do my best to, we can go through this line by line, but, you know, this is all Tara's verbiage that she drafted, and she is probably gonna watch this, but we can start with 40.13. And this is specific to the CRDEA, right? Just to clarify.
yes, well, 40's all
Yeah,
that,
just
right?
to clarify, as specific to that zoning district. So when it comes to lot splits, application has to come to you first before any city commission or board of adjustment.
I'm sorry, Matthew, what are we looking at right
We
now?
are looking at page 50, bottom of page 58 of the agenda.
How did you get rid of that?
I didn't have that.
Okay, I'm sorry, thank you.
No worries.
Oh, there it is. I don't know what you did, but
Gotta love technology.
trying to get the sidebar so I could read the whole page at one time. But I was only getting like half the page, so I wanted to get rid of the sidebar. And I don't know what Sean did, but he did it.
Oh,
You got the right document
Nice.
now? There it is, okay.
Yep.
Mr. Hurley, the IT individual.
Well, before we get started on this, but let me, because we're doing this under the auspices, of course, that the CRD is not in the overlay. Okay? And it's its own scenario. Yes. And so we have language in the overlay about this that's similar. I don't have the other page to look at, but it should be. I mean, because another thought that I've always had is there's no sense that the CRD, I went around that for years, is not part of the overlay. Or the overlay is excluded from that when it's the heart and soul of the historic district. And then if you don't have the overlay, the CRD doesn't have any of the overlay language about the historic nature and the size and scale and compatibility. And so I think one of the first things we should do, along we're talking about, is when we talk about section 40 in the very beginning, we should just say it's part of the overlay. Because I don't think we should be having, different rules a block apart from each other in the historic district.
Yeah, you can't just put it like, that's not, we'd have to do away with Division 40 and incorporate it into the overlay.
Okay, well, but why? Why would we have to do it?
Well, like in the purpose and intent, you can't just say this is part of the overlay.
Okay,
Like, that doesn't get you anywhere. like legally, is what I'm thinking, without expanding the maps and including it and updating it and doing other things.
Okay, well, then that would be my suggestion, that we do put it in part of the overlay. But see, but then that creates the problem of there's no the overlay doesn't, that's why the thing's so screwed up, because then the overlay, if the CRD is part of the overlay doesn't apply to that zone, because that zone's, according to the city, is not part of the overlay. It's been
We
excluded.
find ourselves in a conundrum, don't
Yes,
we?
and it's like, it's so ridiculous, because remember years ago, I kept saying, show me where the CRD is not part of the overlay. And somebody came up with some little piece of paper that said, someone said it's not part of the overlay. It's like, okay, but that didn't seem that well thought out. I mean, it's the heart and soul of the historic district. Why wouldn't the overlay apply? And I think the argument was because whatever's going on in there is not part of what's in the overlay, where you have medium-sized house, large apartment, institution, you have those things break specific boutique hotel. Those things are specifically commented on in the overlay, whereas the CRD doesn't talk about that but none of those things exist in the CRD. Well, boutique hotel doesn't, I guess. So that seemed to be the rationale why it's not part of the overlay.
You're thinking of, if I could just make a point real quick, because just because you build your house to the underlying zoning district doesn't mean that you get to escape the requirements of the overlay if your property is located within it. Okay, so yeah, I may build my house to the specifications of a residential district, but if my property is in the overlay itself, I still have to abide with certain things. For example, you get the benefit of transient lodging, right? Because your property's in the overlay, you can rent it no more than 3 times a year, less than 30 days.
Okay?
Your underlying zoning district does not give you that right. It's prohibited in every underlying residential zoning district, right? But I built my house to the underlying zoning district, but now I get the benefit of the overlay because my property is situated within the overlay, right? So don't think of it as, if I pick and choose in the beginning, then this is the set of rules I have, and I don't have to do anything under the overlay. That's not how it works. If your property is situated within the map, there are requirements that you have to make, period.
Okay.
And benefits that you get.
Well, let me ask you this, because maybe I'm under disbelief here. So when I decide to build a house, I can choose to build it under the overlay or under the residential zoning, right? So what's the difference in Pass and Grill? Just the setbacks?
Well, you have to entice people to build under the overlay.
No. But are you saying that the design has to be exactly the same, that the underlying can make it a little more modern than the overlay, for example?
No, I'm saying when it comes to building, you can pick one. We all know that.
Okay.
Building a new home, you can pick one. But I wanted to make the board clear that just because you decided to build to the underlying one doesn't mean that you don't have to abide to any other restrictions in the overlay when it comes to certain things, for example, like transient lodging. You still get the benefits of some of what the language in the overlay provides you.
Okay, so where do you not get benefits?
Not being in the overlay. Right, because then you don't get that benefit of transient lodging.
Okay. I still think there's a reason why people build under the overlay, and it's not because they get transient lodging. I don't think you can build it. You can't take
No,
a
you
residential.
get that anyways.
You can't build a residential house and then say I'm going to make it transient lodging. You just
No.
have a different rules for how you can rent it.
They build to the underlying for whatever reason. I don't know. I'm not those people. I don't know why they build to the underlying, but there's a reason for it. I mean, the only thing the overlay really gets you right now, and obviously I'm not the planner, I'm just doing the best I can with
Well, it's my
here.
understanding that in the design of the home, the pastoral overlay is a little more restrictive than the underlying. That's why we get to see that.
Well, at this point, you
And
see
I know-
everything.
I know, but there has to be a distinction why in the past we didn't. And I think because in the past, the underlying zone isn't as restrictive, i.e. doesn't have to look historical, doesn't have to have these voids and whatever, blah, 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 that doesn't almost have anyway.
I think that's where we're going. We don't have really design specs.
we're probably talking about design books and doing stuff like that.
Right, which is what this next couple of pages for us to touch base on. I think the benefit to building to the overlay, and you guys can correct me, is you do have, you can build more of a house. You can, your
Bigger
setbacks,
footprint.
yeah, your setbacks are different.
Right.
And the height is different.
Okay, but then it's also, but it's supposed to fit more into the neighborhood.
But this is where the crux is. We haven't really outlined that, so it's very subjective.
I agree.
Okay.
But what's been happening in practicality is if you don't build it under the overlay, then you can build something much more modern that doesn't necessarily fit into the neighborhood. Because the historic board didn't even get a chance to review any of those. I mean, now you let us look at them for informational purposes, okay? And so my point is, as long as we have these two things out there, we're still gonna have these continual problems. And so that's why when I say, going back, we brought this up, the CRD should be part of the overlay. Why shouldn't it be? What's the harm?
I don't know the
And
answer.
so maybe we do need to change it from section 40 and put it in section 20, basically what we've got, but just put it in that way if you think that makes more sense, and I guess in a way it does.
Yeah, but you have to understand the overlay is not, how do I explain this? It's not an underlying zoning district. The CRDEA is.
Okay, I guess
Right.
what I'm saying,
So like.
the overlay should be a
If you
district.
get rid of this and put it in an overlay, you have to have an underlying zoning district for that area, period. Because an overlay is not a zoning district. It is overlaid onto a zoning district.
Okay, but the overlay now applies to, on the map, to those areas they say it is applied, right?
Yeah, wherever the,
Yeah,
I
so
don't
why
have,
can't we just, when we change the map, have it say CRD/PAG? Because CRD is the same as RU, right? That's an underlying, that's an underlying.
I guess what I'm trying to understand, if I may, is what in the overlay would you like applicable to Division 40?
Okay, the language is better, okay? I have a whole list of things that I've gone through in the past, and if we get into them, I can talk about them. But like, lot splits, I don't think is mentioned in the CRD. I know we're talking about it now.
Correct.
But that was a huge problem that existed out there. There's a number of things that the CRD, they had, lot splits, for example, is one that's dealt with in the overlay, but not in the CRD,
We haven't gotten through this.
which is inconsistent, obviously. So we're talking about doing that stuff now, but there might be some other things too. But I don't know why you'd want to say, here's the whole historic district, this is all Pass and Grill, but this downtown section, which is the heart and soul, isn't part of the overlay. I don't know what the harm is in clarifying that and saying it is part of the overlay.
It's just, the whole point of this exercise is because you as a board determined that the overlay was not doing what it intended, right? That was the whole purpose. That's why this whole thing kicked off, is the overlay is not accomplishing. You saw the houses built to it, and it wasn't, we had no guidebooks, we had nothing.
Right.
So even if the CRDEA would have been part of the overlay still had a bunch of issues that we're working through now that need to be addressed regardless.
Oh, I agree, and I'm not, but what I'm saying is, as we address these issues, doesn't it make sense to make the CRD part of the overlay? I don't understand what, I just.
Well, I think we're going down a rabbit hole on that. I think we've got like 4 pages to get through with
All right,
the
let's-
changes. I
yep.
think we got 50 minutes before
All
the
right.
meeting. That, I understand what you're trying to say, and I don't know what the solution is, but I think we've got some things that we're addressing some of those concerns of the overlay.
Okay.
So, where were we? Number 1.
40.1, the lot split.
Okay, 40.13.
Yeah, bottom of page 58.
I'm having a slight problem with my iPad. I've lost,
Kristen, do you have you have it printed? I do. You can have mine.
I just need to get back to where
We can put it on the overhead too to help.
I punched one too many buttons.
It's okay, mine's not working either.
Oh, okay.
We're on good company.
Yeah, if you could start at page 58, bottom of page 58.
Thank you.
My battery's at 100% and I have mine all printed out.
Really?
Yep.
If you'd like, I can run them off quickly as well. Everybody would like a hard copy.
To them.
That might be the easiest.
Okay.
Well, we can,
Thanks, Kristen.
That's just Division 40, correct?
Yep.
yeah,
Okay.
the last 3 pages. Gotta love technology.
Let's try not to lose it here.
You definitely said something.
I don't go very far.
I can see. So while Kristen makes copies, we'll just go old school for a minute. Overhead, please.
So on page 6,
Thank you.
last page 58.
Zoom in right here. Alright, so this is where it starts. If you don't mind zooming in a little bit. Sorry, zooming in. Thank you. So, like I said, Tara added a new section 40.113. We're just going to go through the verbiage. It's only about 4 pages of language, and hopefully everyone can see this. So it's the assembly and lot split of parcels. And that language says that they're required to, and kind of lays out the process. So it's the top of this page. We could zoom in just a little bit more. Okay. So again, the application must be submitted to the Historic Preservation Board for recommendation prior to Board of Adjustment or City Commission. Need to provide documentation, just lays out what the application will require and the process in which lot splits will happen in the CRDEA. And Tara did try to add some criteria for you all, but if there's something else that you would like to look at, that's kind of the purpose of this workshop. Is she added A and B, but if there's something else that you think should be part of the criteria for lot splits, we'd be open to any recommendations.
I like the additions.
And B leaves it pretty open for a lot of room for different characteristics and
Correct.
uses and needs, and I like the language for that.
Yeah, when I worked with Tara on this, sometimes you don't want to be too specific,
Specific.
right? You kind of want to give the board some discretion. So do we have a consensus for the most part?
Yes, I
Yes,
think
I
that's
agree
good.
with it.
Okay. Uh-huh, nice. Okay, she's gonna print out a copy. Thank you.
I have
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Kristen.
Thank you.
Okay. So the next section is 40.14. This is the design guidebook that we've spoken about. So on my conversation with staff, I think it's going to be one, unless the board wants separate design books, but I was envisioning one design book with maybe a few tabs in it. One of them being the CRDEA, just to see if there's specific design guidelines that you may want to see on top of or converse to what's in the overlay.
Yeah, I think if you're gonna, and to go at this a little bit different, since we're at a workshop here today, I think we need to, on 4001 purpose and intent, we need to beef that up, and maybe if you want to keep it as the underlying zone, we change that to look more like the purpose of intent in the overlay, the language. Because now we're talking about whether we have a separate guidebook for the CRD as to the overlay, which I do think makes sense, although the CRD, they're all just make your place look 100 years old now. I mean, they're all pretty similar, and since it's only a block. This, I assume, is this under 41.4, is Tara, we kind of already have that added into section 20 also, don't we?
Something similar,
Yeah.
correct. But again, I think Tara's point, without morphing the two, was to ensure that the CRDEA had more specifications
Okay.
similar to the overlay, but also specific to that zoning district. Because in the CRDEA, you don't have a choice,
Right.
right? These are requirements that you must meet.
These are your tabs.
Mm-hmm.
Public entrance tab. Building orientation, a tab.
Yeah, she went through them all. The question I had was really about storefront character, about large display windows. Is that something that you think fits the character? Because 40% is with a maximum of 80%. I mean, you could have just nothing but windows in the front, which I don't know if that's what the board wants or not.
I mean, if we think about what's there presently, I think that's part of
I was
it.
going,
It's like,
I was going store by store in my mind, thinking about what's there now, and I think that,
I think that all the stores are like that right there.
yes.
okay.
it does say, for all stories, is that in that, or is that? Or did I just read that?
It says the ground floor. Each storefront's linear frontage.
I think you're talking about C1, regularly spaced and similar shaped windows with window hoods.
Window hoods
or
are
trim.
trim,
All
all
building.
building stories. So every floor has to have similar shape and size windows and awnings.
Yeah, that's what Tara meant by that.
I don't know that that's the case now, though.
It's not.
Some of those little apartments above the stores certainly don't have the same size and shape windows.
I don't know if it has, I mean, when I read that, it doesn't have to necessarily be identical, but I think if you're using oval windows on the first floor, then you should use oval windows on the second floor.
Yeah,
You shouldn't have like,
Don't put oval windows.
not oval,
we have some of them. We have
for
round.
example,
We have some round ones.
for example, portholes.
Yeah, but
We do have some portals.
But C1 this is for, it refers to that building in and of itself, not how it compares to the other buildings on the street, correct? I mean, obviously.
Right.
Yeah, it's
Right.
for specific, correct. I guess, I mean,
I'm trying to think about, I can't think of a structure where C1's not occurring right now. You know, I mean,
and all building entrances
yeah, I mean,
are-
all the second floors are all, each building has the same setup per that building. So I don't see where C1 causes it.
well, and just like any code, if something's destroyed or renovated, then they would have to come into compliance if they're not.
Yeah, right. But, I mean, what I'm saying is I don't think there's anything inconsistent with that out down there now. Half the buildings are only one story anyway, and the other ones, you know, they've got porches and balconies that are the same within the building, you know.
Okay.
Isn't it? Can you think of something?
I can't think of anything.
No, I don't think so. Well, of course, you got to do all the CRD. I mean, that's just not 8th Avenue. So, well, the Keystone's consistent, and I think all the way around the edge. See, this brings up, sorry, another issue, because the CRD includes some areas, well, 702, well, which is an empty lot like now, but cannot be a resident, they cannot build a residence there at the moment. And then the two homes north of the Seahorse on that side are both residences.
Right, but this says to non-residential buildings.
Okay, good. No, I'm just trying to think what exists right now that's, or could be built in the CRD. And I would guess that if unless you are building a residence, which you can't, then that architecturally, you would build the windows to match that, so I can't see it being a problem. Anyway, I think C1's fine the way it's written. And I think C2 is kind of the way it is already. Well, you know what? Probably Shadrack's doesn't meet that, the 40% rule.
That's true.
It's got two big windows, but and I don't think you'd want. Is that a storefront? I mean, I don't, you know what I mean?
I don't know that that would be considered storefront. Plus, you also have that big open
Open
space.
patio space.
True, that may apply, yeah.
I was just thinking with the ground level space versus the second floor space above it, they're not the same.
No.
You know, and the awnings are not the same, because there might be awnings above the windows on the second floor, but it's arcade over the first floor storefronts.
But I think it's a similar character. You know, the character remains the same. So it might not be identical, but it's,
Oh, yeah, if you have large storefront plate glass windows on the ground floor because you're using them in the way they're described, but you have residential above, you can have residential windows, you're not gonna have storefront
Right.
type thing. So your second level is going to change from the first level, but the basic of the trim and the size and style, the shape, spacing of the windows on the residential levels, for lack of a better term, would all need to match.
Well, maybe we need a definition of storefront. Not to be so much, because you could build a structure there that wasn't technically, couldn't you build a structure in that area that the ground floor wasn't necessarily a storefront?
Unfortunately, I don't know the answer.
You follow what I'm saying?
I do, but
Couldn't you build a hotel, for example, where the first floor would be parking, even though it might have to be closed in, so you wouldn't want 80% windows looking at parked cars. So, you know, I think we have to determine, you know, maybe decide because you have the options of building things other than stores, although it's very limited.
Well, I wonder if we define it in here or if we just make it a point, because this is all part of the design guidebook too.
Yeah, I mean, that's something, Tara can figure that out. I'm just
Right.
saying that I think we've got to clarify that a little bit, because even though currently everything is a store, it doesn't have to be a store.
Understood.
Well, not really, you know, whatever they're calling it now, the Tortuga, Marine Apartments, Mason House, yeah. That's got residential on the ground floor right now, which they can have, and that doesn't have that kind of windows in the front there. because it's living space.
So is the idea from the board to have it commercial?
What, everything?
Like, no, the window requirements?
Well, I think, yeah, the store, I think this makes it look as if there's the idea that everything is going to be a store there. And so, yeah, I guess, I guess you'd have to make it, if it's going to have a commercial use.
Well, you also have restaurants as well, so I don't think you'd want to limit it to just a storefront or say whether it's retail, or we could look at the uses that are permitted in the CRDEA and maybe pull out specific uses that would apply to.
Right, okay,
Well,
that
it
makes
says
sense.
storefront character.
Yeah.
Buildings at the ground level are to have a storefront character. So whether it is actually a storefront or not.
Whether it's a hotel or whatever, you still wanted to,
Yes.
like you said, to have that character of the storefront.
I think that makes sense, but it's the windows we're talking about now. In some places, like you're not going to want windows.
Right.
In that big area. Like a restaurant, like they have at the Dewey now, which is new.
Or Grace, right?
Yeah, they do want, well, they had windows to start with, because you want to have windows at the restaurant, probably. So that's a great idea, yeah.
Okay.
Well, as we read through this, does anybody, not to lead us along here, I was to get ahead, has anybody got a problem with, I mean, I've gone through D. Has everybody had a chance to look through?
The only question I had for D was, Tara suggested at least 3 out of the 14. I didn't know if the board wanted more.
Well, this is so esoteric to me, and I can't even picture it in my mind, you know what I'm saying? It's like, okay,
Yeah.
we have to have recessed entries at least 3 feet from the primary facade. And I would assume this comes off just some sort of general checklist for lots of lots of commercial things. And I'm almost thinking to myself, gosh, if somebody wanted to build something that didn't quite fit in this, they could just get a variance if it was going to be okay, you know? So I can't even look at this stuff and, I mean, is 5 feet right for canopies? I guess so, you know? And I'm not sure what they mean by canopy. Is that like over one window? You have a 5-foot canopy? That seems awful excessive for just a single window. That's not pretty far.
I think it's a building canopy.
Well, that's what I say. Yeah, you're probably right. So I don't know.
So I'm looking at- yeah.
saying. I don't really know I can't really.
Because many of the sidewalks are underneath.
I guess what I'm saying is this is something where Tara, if she was here, she could be answering, boom, 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 answering these questions. So for the purpose of what we're doing today, I would say we just kind of move through this onto the next level unless someone has something that really sticks out. Like a canopy.
Well, I do think maybe canopy needs to be defined within this.
I would agree.
Because I think it means something different than some people may interpret that differently as what a canopy is. I think the character of 8th Avenue, and those canopies are actually part of the building structure.
Well, the other thing.
And-
Go ahead, sorry.
Especially in Pasadena.
Perhaps somebody can refresh my memory. What is the architectural term for down on 8th? It's a covered area. It's where the second story cantilevers over the first story. What is that architectural? Is that also considered a canopy?
Well, and I think that's
No.
what she's calling a canopy here. That's what I think she's calling a canopy here, where.
As opposed to an
protrudes out
awning.
Over the sidewalk.
No, I don't think that, there's a whole nother, it already exists, I think, in Division 40.
What I'm, is it an awning, is it a canopy, and what is the structure, what is that structure called?
It's an
where
arcade.
Cantilevers over.
It's
Arcade
arcade.
between
Or,
buildings.
or like a galley, I think.
But we're talking about, because we're allowing people to build over the sidewalks on the second
So
floor.
that's cantilevered over the
Over the sidewalk is,
sidewalk, where there's actual.
what is that
Would it fall
type
under
of
9 on the
design?
overhang?
It has a particular name, and I thought it was canopy.
I want to say colonnade, but I could be wrong.
Well,
I'd have to look.
My point is,
Words.
Yeah.
we want
Right.
the continuation of that if people want to build that, and most people would because you get extra footage for your building, like at the Dewey. But I think it's more than 6 feet. I know it's a lot more, so you don't
Well,
want
it says a minimum of 5 feet, and that's so that 2 pedestrians can pass under it at the same time, side by side.
Right.
Without.
But that's going to be determined, we already have a set width of the sidewalk on 8th Avenue, and probably on the parts of Gulf Way where the CRD applies. And,
But if development happens on 9th, it would be a little different because those sidewalks are a different size.
yes, and so that was long ago when I thought maybe we should look at that differently for the CRD, but that's neither here nor there at this moment. But what I'm saying is that it says, where am I here? I'm losing my mind. It says canopies at least 5 feet, okay? But there's another one here that said,
There's 2 down that says overhang, extended minimum 5 feet.
oh, here it is, balconies, 6 feet maximum may project. And so I don't know if we're calling that area over the arcade a balcony, it's got to be bigger than 6
Arcade,
feet.
that's
I said that
the-
earlier. I said that earlier.
That's what it's called, it's
Yes.
called an arcade,
Right.
which kind of doesn't make any sense, but that's, when it cantilevers over the sidewalk, it's an arcade. Thank you.
Right, but we're talking about how we deal with that second floor, and so, is the second floor also called an arcade? Or is the arcade is the open area on the bottom, right? So we're
Correct.
searching for what we call that area above it.
Well, I feel like that would be what is referred to as balconies, because it's 6 feet maximum.
Yeah, but it has to be more than 6 feet, because the sidewalks are a lot more than 6 feet.
But think about, so what would be called, for like as an example, Brass Monkey's balcony? What would that be referenced? I mean, because it's over an arcade, so would you then call,
That's what we're saying, we're searching for that word that we would call that, whether it's the second floor over the arcade, or like you maybe said colonnade, I don't know if that's.
I think they're kind of,
Interchangeable.
depending on the type of architecture that it is,
Columns and piers,
yeah.
Well, that's something,
set of continuous arches that are all supported with columns or piers is an arcade.
well, I guess what I'm saying is I don't think we want to put a limitation. Why do we even have a number for minimum and maximum?
Well, because you don't want the balcony, 12 feet.
Well, they can't build it over the street. I mean, that's going to be controlled by something else.
Well, that's what this is trying to do. Like,
Well,
you
the
can only project 6 feet from the front yard setback, so you can only go past your property line in the air 6 feet.
Yeah, except for now, there's ones that are probably 8 feet.
Yeah, but don't
So if
focus.
you want to match up the arcades as you go down the sidewalk, if somebody puts it like they did at the Dewey. The difference is the Dewey on the second floor is an open-air balcony, but they could have walled that in, like the other old buildings there, where there's rooms actually over the sidewalk. If you fell through the floor, you'd land on the sidewalk. So my point is, those all have to be,
portico? Is portico our mystery word?
no, it's,
Not necessarily.
Portico. I don't know what that means.
It's just, something just to pull out of
let's
that.
throw portico out there too. Some more out there,
We
you
can
know?
drive under it.
Why not?
Well, the good thing is, we're looking at the design guidebook, right? So we can have pictures, once we attach what we mean to the characteristic and the actual picture of it, at least everybody will be on the same wavelength with that.
Well, that's why I say we probably lead, yes, but that's why I wonder whether we want to put, absolutes on the feet, because I'm not sure what it is. I don't think it's 6 feet. I think it's probably 8. But you'd have to go down there It's a setback. It's the setback from the side, from the curb to the front of the store.
Correct. And
Where she has 6-foot maximum protrusion for balconies and 5-foot minimum for canopies, what's the, what differentiates a balcony from a canopy?
A definition.
That's why I'm saying if Tara was here, that's why we just hold this from.
I know, I can't fill her shoes, I'm sorry.
A balcony would create an arcade underneath it, whereas a canopy would be attached to the building. I mean, that,
No, that's not even, right. I mean, no, because an arcade actually has pillars and all sorts of stuff.
Maybe we can have a picture
Now,
book.
Who doesn't like pictures? And I think we do need to define some of these things so that it's clear. Or else we're gonna get into interpretation where someone comes in and says, this is a canopy, not a balcony, and I can already see that happening, so.
We definitely need some.
Definition.
The definition on Google, a canopy is an overhead roof or else a structure over which fabric or metal covering is attached, able to provide shade or shelter from weather conditions such as sun, hail, snow, and rain. It can also be a tent, generally without a floor.
well,
Okay.
So it could be,
so canopy is fine. The big people, well, especially because since the way it's set up now, they can build 3-story buildings. Okay, so the historic buildings that are there are only 2-story. And so on the 3rd floor, if you did something totally different, you could have obviously canopies over the windows. It could be a whole different types of windows or whatever, but it's 5 feet awful. Is it a maximum or at least 5 feet? What does it say?
At least.
I mean, I have windows, bedroom windows with a canopy, and I can tell you it's not 5 feet.
It's smaller, right?
Yes.
I was about to say, 5 feet seems,
I mean, 5 feet if like
pretty
a
long.
storefront canopy for the ground floor, that's I think that's talking about. So, you know, again, I think we just move on from this and just say this is a point of contention that we need a little more information on, and Tara can get involved in this a little bit because, yeah, and plus, as stated, we can say, see example with a picture here. This is what it looks like, but yes, Lynn.
I have a book, pretty thick book, actually two versions of it, one from the 80s and one current, that has in the front of the book illustrations and definitions of all these things we're talking about. I can't get my hands on it today,
Okay.
but I can certainly get my hands on it.
the pattern book?
I would like to see that.
No, not that. It's like an architectural thing. It goes through all of the basic architectural design styles in America since, 300, 400 years ago to now.
I just think it's going to be important in this to define the difference between arcade, balcony, canopy, overhang.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. But it's going to be helpful because we already have examples of that exist, what we wanted to look at. So we just need to clean that up.
So maybe if we use part of Lynn's book to kind of
Yeah. No, we need to.
the subject line of what it is, and then a picture or something adjacent to it. That way, hopefully it takes out the question of,
It does, because I've used those books a lot to define, as I'm describing a historic building, to say it has this and this and this on it. And we can reverse that and look at, the different elements that are within this book.
it's a great,
So they have some illustrations.
great
I will
tool.
we'll take care of that. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
So are we on to E now then? Is that fair to say? Roof-based mechanical equipment and other roof penetrations. And before we talk on that, I mean, it's my understanding that there had been a change. I mean, I've heard, on top of the Dewey or the Berkeley, it's got a lot of stuff up there. And I think I've been told that that couldn't happen now, that they did some change in the ordinances. Didn't dream that. That's not striking a bell with anybody.
You're talking about like additions and,
Yeah, elevators.
like elevator shafts?
Well, okay, I know that you have to get a variance to like have a rooftop bar. Apparently you didn't then, I think is my memory of what supposedly happened, because I've heard people say, well, they couldn't do that today, I guess without getting variances. And so, this seems to be essentially taking that into account, because basically saying that all that stuff has to be hidden or screened.
Correct. With similar architectural details. So essentially, you won't even know what's in there.
Except for the bigger problem would be, that they don't mention this in this, is elevator. Because some people, if they want to have an elevator that goes up to the roof, that might be 8 or 10 feet higher than the roof.
Well, it doesn't reference it specifically, but roof-based mechanical and other roof penetrations, and an elevator would certainly penetrate the roof if it's going up to the rooftop.
It would, but if you, it's located at the rear elevations and be configured and screened with similar architectural details that are consistent. And I guess what I'm saying is, an 8-foot or 10-foot thing is very hard to screen on top of a, and so, and I don't know if this is true, but I believe there are elevators that have all the mechanics and the, well, I guess you can't just come up on the floor, be raised up. No, but I think you can make the shafts, if they put the mechanical equipment in the bottom instead of the top.
I think there's fire code that defines all that.
Yeah. Well, I guess my question would be, maybe we need to have language about whether we even want to have people have an elevator that goes to the rooftop.
I think you need one.
Not if you're not allowed to be on the rooftop.
Well, if it is public space, then you have to have one.
Yeah.
Public commercial space.
ADA.
Well, okay, well, I understand that, but since.
So you're just saying no rooftops at all?
No, I don't know. I'm just saying it's worthy to discuss, because we talk about how the heights bother us so much. I mean, you know, right now, on the historic buildings, there's no elevators that go to a rooftop. No rooftops are in use, with the exception of the new building that was built that was, you know, and there's no, I don't believe, is there, and I may be wrong about this, on a commercial structure, do you have an absolute right to use the rooftop, or is that something where you have to ask permission to do that? You know, and so.
I know in some occasions it's a conditional use, which means it's not, which means it's permitted, but you have to go through an application process.
Depends on the district too.
Correct.
Right, because
The commission approval.
I think, and maybe this is speaking for myself, but, you know, a lot of these places, you know, when you, in residences as well, everybody wants to get up on the roof and so they can, you know, have the views. And I would think, even though 100 years ago they built these buildings, they just said, well, just, you know, walk 50 feet down to the beach and look at it yourself. You know, now everybody's going to want to have that. So any new construction along there, I guarantee you, people are going to want to be up on the roof, and maybe that's something we want to discuss, which is totally inconsistent with the historic nature and the height requirements around there. So I don't, maybe we want, and I'm not saying today, but it's something we should need to think about, whether we should even be contemplating in the CRD the ability to people to put stuff on the rooftop. How do y'all feel about that? I don't know, maybe.
I think that's a very valid point, especially if you think about the history of the community and what it's been and what it looks like. You know, I don't think they were doing that 50 years ago where they were saying, let's go up to the rooftop. I mean, it just didn't exist. So I think by keeping it more consistent with what our goal is of the historic aspects, I think that's
Yeah, I mean,
Great call-out.
I really do. I mean, you know, and, you know, to me, as I said, you know, that's why people go down to the beach. That's why you live 50 feet from the beach. That's why, you know, you go down and look at the sunset. You don't necessarily have to go to the rooftop, and because then everybody want to go to the rooftop. Then we'll have a, you know, higher and higher elevator shafts, bars on top, all that kind of stuff. And I just don't know if that's, it certainly is not, it doesn't fit into the scale or the compatibility of what that neighborhood is like now.
I don't think it fits the character either.
Well, yeah, right. All those words. I mean, we're already essentially changing, well, let me just say this again. So nothing's been built there in probably 60 years, except for one structure. Right? Does everybody agree with that? I don't
Yes.
think- Yeah, maybe 70 years, 60 or 70 years. Okay, and so, you know, the historic nature of what it is, that one structure is an outlier. It's not even a historic structure. Well, no, that's not true. The hurricane, I guess, would be within the last 40 years anyway. and that's technically in the CRD, but I really think you have to look at 8th Avenue, that corridor, differently than the other parts of the CRD, when you stand at one end and look down to the other. And that's historically been the downtown area. I don't know, I mean, I would think we were already supposedly adding a 3rd floor because of FEMA regulations, right? They didn't do that historically because they didn't have to, but now that we're saying, because that's why we get in that old big story, that argument about BFE and why should it apply when it can't be residential anyway. So it seems like we're already conceding an extra floor that is totally, a 3rd floor is totally non-historic to 8th Avenue. The only exception being there's a 3rd floor on the hotel, but that's only like 35 feet from ground level. I mean, it's still really low. Anyway, I'm just pointing that out because when we get here in a few minutes and talking about height, I'm going to start railing on that again. So,
There is one rooftop on one of the older buildings on 8th Avenue.
which one's that?
I get my places mixed up, but the building where the post office was, where the patios, the rooms come all the way out to the street, and enclosed all the way to the street. They have a
Yeah,
rooftop.
well, not where the post office was. You're talking about, because post office is one story, but it's the one that's, yeah, but it doesn't have a,
It has a rooftop seating area. Very tall.
the one right next to the Dewey then.
Mhm.
Does it really?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's accessible from the back.
Well, I know that there's back porches.
Well,
on
there's
the
a
second
stairwell that goes
floor,
up
but there's a
to,
stairway that goes up to the rooftop? Okay. But that's not an elevator either.
no.
Yeah, so.
No. And that height is appropriate. I never knew that was a rooftop up there.
It's the small one towards the back of it.
It's really cool.
Well, so I guess I point out that we don't, on that, we're not talking about elevators and whether we need to have a discussion or,
I think she intended to include that, so we can always clarify mechanical equipment.
so is it everyone's understand, obviously, if the top floor, not the rooftop, but if the top floor is residential, like it's a hotel, right? Would you have to have an elevator to go up to the top, to the rooftop if you wanted to let your,
Is there an amenity on the rooftop? Is there like a pool?
no, let's just say there's a view.
Would it be open to the public?
No, that's what I'm saying. It'd be-
Well, it would be open to a hotel guest.
Correct. So there have to be an elevator because they use stairways then.
Well, that would be an ADA.
Correct.
thing.
It's an ADA thing.
Well, that's why I'm saying.
Because not everyone can get upstairs.
I assume that was the answer. I'm just
Yeah.
throwing that out there, right? Because it's not like it's.
Like if all that's up there is a roof,
Mechanical.
right, or like AC or HVAC or something, then no.
But what if you had a condo, that the top floor was condominiums? Would you have to have an elevator to the rooftop?
Again, is there an amenity there or not?
Just the view. Suntan.
If you're saying this is a view pad where you can go up, then yeah, I would say the condo would be, not to give them free legal advice, but they should probably put an elevator.
You need ADA.
I would-
You need ADA. Anytime that you're going to have the ability to have people in a specific area,
Even though I own this house, I own my condo.
You might not be able to use stairs.
that would,
I understand that about people.
Well,
Yeah, but you're saying a single condo or like part of a condo association?
No, I'm talking about these small structures.
Yeah.
You know, you might have a single condo on a 3rd floor.
Well,
Like
yeah,
that.
I don't think your
Anything
friends are
3
gonna.
floors or higher in a commercial building has to have an elevator. Even in
Is it a
residential
commercial building if
even
it's a
residential
condominium
building now,
though?
right?
Is it a
You have
commercial
to
building if it's a
I think so.
condominium?
pay for it.
It's not. It's not.
Right, well,
So height. Let's hear it.
okay. Well, I found this really great thing that you all gave us a while ago. Remember when we sent the drone out there? Remember that information where we said what was the top?
The heights of all the buildings?
Yes, from the ground.
Yeah, I've been trying to find that.
Yeah, well, I'll give you a copy here. So it goes anywhere from, this is in the CRD, from 10 feet, which would be, I think, that the little room for art or something there, that little place, to 50.4 feet, which is the Berkeley Beach Club. And I assume that's probably to the top of the elevator shaft, I think. I hope so. I hope it's not higher than that. And that most of the older structures there that are the not one-story ones are, well, like the Marine Apartments, which is the Tortuga is 27.8 feet. Paradise is 30.6 feet. The building you were talking about, just, Sean, the one,
Or Bamboozle is?
no, where Doty's is.
Doty's, okay.
Yeah, the one just east of the Berkeley Beach Club, that's 29.8 feet. Keystone is 35 feet at its highest point. Brass Monkey's 26.8 feet at its highest point. And so I think we were talking about if we include the BFEs and the 35 feet, we're talking about like 45 feet or something, is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Right. Which obviously with the Berkeley Beach Club being 50 feet, I'm sure that's because of the rooftops, the top of the bar on the roof and that kind of thing, which again, I think nowadays you'd have to get a variance for, so,
I think even when it was built.
I'm not sure it was. It's neither here nor there because it was built. I thought someone told me they changed that. Anyway, the point being is that would be something that the city would have control over, whether they could go up that high or not. And so I just wonder if 35 feet is too much, because that gives them 45 feet. And all these, I'm just thinking if you have, you don't need 45 feet to build 3 stories. And if the first story is uninhabitable, why wouldn't we have it at a lower height, overall height? Because even if we said it was, even if we said it was 25 feet with the BFE, that would make it 35 feet, which again, since the ground level's not, you can't live in it, why do you need to be higher than a total of 35 feet from the ground level?
That'd be 2 stories.
No, it wouldn't.
Well, 2 habitable stories.
2 above.
Yeah, but historically, we have 2 habitable or 1 habitable. And so I guess my point I'm saying is I recognize we're allowing 3 stories, or if we want to, I suppose, we're allowing 3 stories, but why does it have to be almost 4 stories? Because I'm going to go back to say, I think 35 feet, when they said that, they meant from the ground, and BFE wasn't included, and that's why it's not mentioned in the CRD. But we've talked about that for our face, it's turned blue. And the necessity of having a BFE when you can't, it's not residential anyway. So so why don't we just consider if we give them 3 stories, why do we have to give them 45 feet? Why can't we just say 25, and then they get the 10 for the first floor, that's 35 feet, that's 3 stories. I mean, how do y'all feel about that? Because what's happening is, you take all those buildings, the historical nature of those buildings, and you take out the Berkeley Beach Club, because that's not historical. And that is so much higher than everything else. And now we're saying, hey, if you want to build a new feature on the CRD, it has to have all these historic elements, but going to be twice as high as everything else, or half again as high as everything else. And it changes, it changes the whole look.
I would agree.
Again, it goes back to what we said in the beginning. There was a maximum height residential, and they changed it to so much above BFE, which still meets that maximum height. And this one says maximum height not to exceed 35 feet. It says right at the very beginning of the section.
Right, but let's say we've lost the battle on saying BFE doesn't apply, because I think we have, essentially, even though it makes no sense. So why do we not change it from 35 to 25? Where is the...
That would make better sense if we're going to be playing the BFE.
Where's the detriment to anybody who hasn't built there? Okay? You're saying it's got to look historical? and we're taking away, 10 feet that's non-historical.
I would agree with
No,
that.
I'd say change the maximum to 25 feet.
Plus BFE.
Well, then we probably need to actually include the plus BFE
I
in
think
there,
we
yeah.
should put that language in there, so it's
do
not
too.
misunderstood.
I
would
agree. Because I don't think that was the intent before, doesn't make sense.
I think you're better off legally just saying the max height is 35, including BFE.
Well, that's what it did say, but it got misinterpreted the one time it was
interpret that
used.
as being 35 feet and add the BFE.
Right,
I have
so
not.
Well, I'm
either
saying-
say 35 including BFE,
Right.
or say 25 plus BFE.
I mean, this
But you could-
BFE measurement
It's gonna change.
happened
I know,
since
and I
since
know
I've
that's
been
also
here.
a
It was
sliding
recent.
number.
No, yeah, we're not blaming.
No, but I'm just saying it was recent in that I remember the commission deciding this is where we're going to measure from moving forward. It wasn't. I don't know.
Yeah, but I
It
think,
was like one motion, and now all of a
no,
sudden.
but I think the distinction being, the BFE, to me, is a residential definition, not a commercial definition, since you can't put it on the first floor
And
anyway.
it doesn't hurt to
It's FEMA.
restate it.
Yeah, so I
And
saw,
have it clear.
so 35 feet including BFE, that would be fine?
I think it should be. the
So
35.
40 years from now, or let's say 20 years from now, we're all still here. You want everything to be at 35 feet max.
Well, and
Everything that's currently there now, 35 feet max across the board,
Well, because
nothing higher.
everything that's there now is less than 35 feet.
No, but I'm just saying, you got to assume that as
Yeah.
these codes are there, things are going to get knocked down and built back up or get
It's only
destroyed.
one block. I mean, the point is every single
Well, the
thing.
capstone is 35.3.
Yeah, okay, 3 inches, so, I mean, you know what I'm saying,
But
and the BFE could change. When the
BFE
water
could
comes up, they
It
can.
will change.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I think it is important to establish the term BFE.
But what if the BFE one day is 18 feet?
Well, that's
Well,
why you would
that's-
probably state it 25 feet above BFE, because you're not gonna get away.
So at a minimum, they get 25 feet above BFE.
If BFE has to be
Because
flexible.
it does fluctuate. So like if 10 years down the road, BFE is 19 feet, now your 35-foot structure just turned into a 16-foot building, which you can't do
Okay,
much with.
oh, you're right. I mean, yeah, that's why maybe we should do it that way and say 25 feet. Plus
Like
BFE.
plus instead of 35 including.
Yeah.
It's a 25-foot max on top of BFE, regardless of what BFE is.
Yes.
So you could essentially have 40, 50-foot buildings.
Well,
Well, but we're not gonna be able to stop.
I know.
The
we've
flood
already-
elevation
we've
issues.
already had to
Yeah,
give up,
that is what it is.
yeah.
Yeah.
That's the problem with the historic aspect is, whereas with the homes, we're allowing the homes to stay that way, but we can't, well, we can still do it the old houses, the old buildings.
So as much fun as I'm having, we have to end this
Okay.
workshop, unfortunately. I could go for another hour, guys.
Could you?
I could.
Well, can we discuss, or should we do that in the meeting if we want to schedule another next
Yes.
month?
Workshop?
One next month before the,
Yeah, why don't we just close the workshop? Because we have to start the meeting at 4.
Okay?
And then we can add something to the agenda. You guys are okay with that? Sorry to cut you off.
Talk about the workshop.
Correct.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, if you can just wait 1 minute while I shut this one down and start.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
No gavel?
I do. Want me to hit it?
Hit it.
We are going to adjourn the workshop.
Nice.
right on time.
Right on time, the bell rings. Man, time flew. We even went an hour and a half this time.
You didn't even think it would take an hour.
Well, Tara's more efficient
let's do the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, Madam Clerk, can we get a roll call?
Member Daschle?
Here.
Member Hawkinsmith?
Here.
Member Young? Here. Member Hurley?
Here.
Member Lowry?
Here.
We have a quorum.
Okay, so the first thing we have here is the approval of the agenda. Does anybody have anything they'd like to add to the agenda?
I just wanted to add a couple of announcements for Gulf Beach's Historic Museum at the end of the meeting.
And I'd like to add at the end of the meeting as well, just some fun happenings in Paso Robles.
Okay, I would like to add as an item of discussion, just an update, if we can get one, on the garbage pickup in the historic district. Just talk about that briefly.
And if we could add a workshop.
Yes, very good. And then we also need to pick a new workshop date, hopefully maybe within the next month. Okay, and with that, I would make a motion to approve February's agenda.
Second.
All at once.
Member Hawkinsmith?
Approved.
Member Daschle?
Yes.
Member Hurley?
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry. You were looking at me. so
Member
I-
Hurley?
Yes.
Member Young?
Yes.
Chair Lowry?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, so the first thing we have is the approval of minutes. Does anybody had an opportunity to read the minutes, and anybody have any comments?
I read the minutes and I wanted to add in 5E, we also discussed local designation when we were discussing the Hurley Park concession stand.
I do recall us doing that.
Concession stand.
So that's on item 5E.
So I guess what we would do is just add for that to be added to the minutes, correct?
Right.
Okay.
Correct.
Motion with that change.
Did you do a motion to do that?
I can't.
Oh, you did, okay.
No, I can't.
So I need to make a motion, I make a motion to add that to the minutes.
And second.
Member Young?
Yes.
Member Hawkinsmith?
Yes.
Member Daschle?
Yes.
Member Hurley?
Yes.
Chair Lowry?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay.
Chair, I would just, there may be none, but if you want to get audience comments on things that are not on the
Oh,
agenda.
I'm sorry, I
No,
shouldn't have jumped that.
no worries.
So audience comments, anybody that in the audience out there that would like to say anything before we proceed? Okay, seeing none, let's go to the action items. 4A is the variance on number 23091 at 2814 Paso Robles Way. And yes, we have a presentation on that.
Just a short one.
Okay.
Good evening, members, and Chair Lowry, Kristen Coleman, Senior Planner. So today we have 2814 Paso Robles Way, the applicant and owner, Peregrine Construction Group for Matthew Foster, located at 2814 Paso Robles Way. So the request today is looking for a recommendation on the unnecessary and undue hardship variance, case number 23091. So at the Historic Preservation Board's request, the proposed height variance for the construction of a new single-family dwelling is being brought forward for a recommendation so it can go to the Board of Adjustment. It may look familiar as the design of the home was previously brought before the Historic Preservation Board for consideration in October and November of last year under case 23077. So to bring you onto the property, the subject property is highlighted in green. The zoning is RU2 and the Paso Robles overlay, and is currently a vacant lot with dimensions of 50 by 120, so it's approximately 6,000 square feet in area. So the Board of Adjustment request is to construct a new single-family dwelling that exceeds the permitted height of 32 feet or 40 feet from grade, with 32 feet 11 inches or 41.08 feet from grade, which is proposed for an elevator shaft to provide access to the proposed rooftop area, which needs relief from Land Development Code Section 20.17. So here's just a picture of the site plan of the layout, so you can kind of see it how it is situated on the property. And again, this is what has been submitted to the Board of Adjustment. So it may be a little different from what was previously here. Here is the front elevation with the variance height, just kind of notated where that is on the top of the building. Here is the rear elevation. And just the proposed fourth floor plans, you can kind of see the area of it and the access, so you know what you're looking at.
On this one right here, just, is the bottom of this the east face or the west face?
So the bottom of that would be facing east.
Okay, so you come up the elevator and you turn left to look at the beach, all right?
Well, yeah, you would turn to your right because it's facing west, I'm sorry. So the bottom of here where it says 29 feet 2 inches, that's facing Paso Girl Way.
That's Paso Girl Way, which is 20, okay, that's what I wanted to know, all right.
Yep. So with that, we're just looking for a motion to recommend approval with conditions, or perhaps denial to the Board of Adjustment with any comments that you may wish that I include with my staff findings report. As well, any questions that you may have.
Well, I know we have someone, I think, to speak on.
If you would like, they're welcome to be present.
Well, I read this stuff, I guess, yesterday or within the last week, and it seems like the person asking for the variance said it's only 11 inches, and the city was saying it's like 2.5 feet.
So they did review it from when it was previously before you. They did knock that down a little bit, so right now they're asking for 11 inches for relief.
So there's,
They did revise a little bit, but they're still asking for the variance.
right. And the other question I had, and you may know the answer, you may not, but it looked like, and I couldn't really tell because, you know, some of the dimensions are so small they're hard to read, but I think they said the second floor had a 10-foot ceiling, and the third floor had a 9.5-foot ceiling. 'Cause I know there was some talk about how in modern homes you have to have at least that amount of height within the ceilings, and I wanted to know if that's
I'm not sure if, let me just check and see if I have any cross-sections in this packet.
And so while you're looking at that, because I'm sure the representative can probably answer that, but I don't think it mentioned what the height of the garage was, interior.
Okay.
And that, to me, was something I really want to know the answer to.
Matthew, do you have any objection for the representative to come up, or?
It's his application.
Okay.
I'm assuming he has some kind of authority to be here. Perfect.
I believe Mr. Wilson, correct? Yes. Okay.
Hello, my name's Ron Wilson. You're asking about the garage floor height. Is the headroom is 8 foot. The actual ceiling in there is 9'4", but you got to have beams to carry the whole second floor is concrete. So there's beams inside of that garage. So the actual ceiling height headroom is 8 foot.
So that would be the bottom of the beams?
Yes.
Okay.
And then the elevator shafts are on the street side of the building, is that correct? Or elevator shaft?
The elevator shaft is directly centered in the building from the front, back, and from side to side, pretty much.
And is that because, and I have to look at the plans again, so the front facade, and by that I mean I'm talking about the one that faces Paso Girl Way, let's use that, even though I know it's on 2 streets. Does it go straight up to the parapet of where the roof is, or is there like a angled back roof that goes back towards the rooftop? You follow what I'm saying? Maybe, I think we have probably the,
Yeah. I mean, probably the best way to look at it is there's sort of a rendering that was put on the front page, and it shows better than a straight-on elevation.
Right, there was sort of a bird's eye view that you had up on the projector earlier that looked like the elevator shaft and elevator access were right at the front of the building on the Paso Grill Way side.
No, they're located in the center.
Yeah, that was just the moon deck area that they were showing. They weren't showing the edge of the building.
In fact, if you're standing at the front of the house, the way this 3D looks right now, and it's higher than a person would stand, you can barely make out a corner of the elevator shaft.
So if I may, if you look at your screens, that is the picture that Mr. Wilson's referencing.
right.
And if we could go to the overhead, perhaps. Here is a side elevation of the right. And that may give you a little bit more context as far as where they are located.
So in this picture, Paso Grill Way would be to the left, right? Correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
So you would see the air conditioning units that are located on the roof would be in front of the proposed elevator shaft.
And with wanting the mechanicals to be at the rear of the building, and that's not something that exists now, that's on our wish list.
It's not, unfortunately.
Could ruin your sunset view if it was at the back of the building, right?
Okay, so I guess my question is, and you probably know this is where this is setting, but since this is a vacant lot, isn't the undue hardship of your own making?
I mean, I don't necessarily know how to answer that, but I think we walked into, isn't the PAG overlay sort of relatively new?
I don't know, 10 years, 15 years?
Good topic of conversation.
So, I mean, I think when we built a couple of we built a lot of houses around here. We're all over St. Petersburg, Sarasota, Terra Verde, and I think when we stepped into the initial design and the Paso Grill overlay, they were unaware of the actual heights in there. So we came out the gate, I think, a lot higher. And
Say they were unaware of the heights. Who are you referring to as they?
they were unaware of the heights because they were unaware that they were just looking at it as RU2 versus RU2 PAG.
City staff, they, the landowners, they, the builders?
Peregrine Construction.
Okay.
That's what I mean. I
Bless you.
don't want to rump, yeah, I don't want to.
So
You had mentioned before that to that effect, and I think that's why I was talking earlier, Matthew, about because of the size of this lot, you have to build under the overlay. Is that correct?
it's the
I'm getting a nod back. That's right. Yes. So I think right.
That's correct.
Okay. So again, and obviously it's. I mean, the way I look at it is this: is some guys bought the place. They didn't know exactly what the rules were. They built it like they normally made the plans like they did, and then they realized they had to amend that. So then they've just changed a couple things and not really dealt with the initial. If they had known about it initially, they would have given us a different design.
Well, I'll say this too. And I've built from Daytona Beach, Palm Coast, all over the state of Florida, hundreds of them. I've never run into a jurisdiction that your building heights, every jurisdiction has a max building height, but every jurisdiction other than the Paso Grill overlay, their max building height does not include chimneys, antennas, or elevator shafts. So I think that's the direction too. And we were even told by an architect who builds a lot of stuff around here, oh, your elevator shaft is fine. So we didn't know it until after we got through permitting that, oh, wait, your elevator shaft, unlike everywhere else, it's not okay in Paso Grill.
Well, and I get that. I think the answer I would say, well, you know, because it's a historic district, it's different than where you build. And so it has different rules because of that. And that's for you all to have to figure that out and not for us to do that. And if we start agreeing that people can just build things, then the exception becomes the rule. And it's like, why, if it's an empty lot, why do they start off with needing a variance? And there's reasons for it that you've mentioned, but that's not our problem, you know? And so I don't know, that's the first time I've heard. I'm not doubting what you're saying about how every place else elevators aren't included, because that to me is an awful big structure as opposed to a chimney, which is pretty common, you know, that you see in throughout the history of houses. There's always been a chimney on top, you know. So, you know, it just from, you know, my point of view, I just don't see how it's a hardship that you haven't created yourself. And if the answer is, you know, dropping one roof to 9'3" and the other one to, you know, 9'3", then that's the way it should be. I mean, we have enough problem with houses being as high as they are in this historic, you know, I don't know. The other people can say we can talk amongst ourselves, but I don't know how big a deal it would be for you to change your interior ceiling heights to take care of that 11 inches. Because as I said, you know, the exception becomes the rule. Then everyone comes in and says, well, we need to do this, we can do this. Why not? They got to do that. And it's like, I don't know. What was the reason that we recommended that variance? And you know, all we're doing is making a recommendation. We're not the board that's going to approve or deny this, all right? But as a distinction, you know, yes, you could have built that over there in that block or whatever because it's not a historic district. And so, you know, we have to be protective of what we have. And so it seems to be, it'd be a lot nicer if the people building houses would just comply with the rules that are out there. That's my opinion anyway. So, I don't know, I don't mean to speechify, because if everybody has something they want to say, they can, or ask some questions, but.
I would agree, and I also think, you know, something that's unique for our city is that we consider a pool a permeable surface, which I noticed that it looks like the pool has been removed, so, you know, that's kind of a benefit as well, but we are in a historic community. This is a vacant lot, and I think provisions should be made to where we don't have to ask for, you know, special changes.
But with that being said, I do want to say I'm thankful, I suppose, that you changed from 2.5 to 11 inches. Can you explain? You don't have to explain it, but how did you?
We reduced one of the floor ceiling heights, and then we also were able to get, we only need, so we were under the assumption too, I've never seen an elevator shaft that would allow for 7-foot headroom height, but the one we're putting in will. So the elevator shaft itself was also reduced a foot. So, I mean, I hear where you guys are coming from, but we're asking for 11 inches that's in the center of the building, and I don't, you could stand four houses down and you're not going to be able to have that eye angle to be able to see that it's.
I know, I think it's just the principle of the fact that it's an empty lot. And so, you know, if it's an empty lot, why does somebody come in and decide? I know you didn't initially, but why would somebody say, well, I don't want to build by the rules, I want to build it just a little bit higher? What's wrong with that? And then it's just the atrophy aspect of it, that it's just always something, you know? And it's like, if you can't get, you know, people to follow essentially the rules on an empty lot, where can you? You know, so, you know, I mean, I look at it this, okay, you have an 8-foot garage. Well, I know how high 8 feet is, and I know there's very few people that can reach 8 feet. Okay, I mean, I can because I'm 6'2", but most people can't. So what do you need 8 feet for storage? You're gonna have 8-foot high van? They don't make them that big. You know, I mean, you're gonna have to get on the person's gonna have to get on the ladder to store stuff at the height of the garage. And so I just don't see where, you know, and a garage is in a livable space where you can't just take 11 inches out of the garage and make it, you know, 7'1". Any vehicle can get into that. I mean, that's, most people probably can barely reach it.
The shortest garage door we can get is 7 foot. So you'd have to have minimal room above that just for headers.
Well, are those garage doors gonna go, I don't know how many, where the beams are that drop down? Are the beams covering the whole rooftop that they can't fit the garage door between the beams?
Yeah, but also that, you wouldn't be able to roll the garage door up.
That's what I'm talking about. I know you have to have that structure above.
That's the issue.
I wonder how spoiled we've become that not being able to have an elevator to our third floor rooftop deck is a hardship now.
It's not that, it's not the way we looked at that also, and we had buyers, the buyers have already canceled out just because this process has taken, it's not this process, but the entire process has taken an excruciating amount of time, and they were the ones that were really pushing on us, they gotta have the elevator shaft or they're not buying it because they had an elderly father who was gonna be moving into the home. An elevator shaft's really just for the main living areas and stuff, but to go up and enjoy the rooftop deck, they really wanted that elevator shaft. And so that's where we started fighting for it real hard. Those buyers have left, so we're building it as a spec at this point.
Well, I was gonna say, because it seems to me, and I'm just going by my own thought process about the houses that are down there or that I'm familiar with. I don't think there's very few houses where the elevator goes to the roof. I mean, I think that's...
I've only seen one new house within 2 blocks of this one, and it's right on the beach, and it's a different style house. It doesn't have an elevator shaft.
My elevator doesn't go to my room.
No, I'm saying, I'm very, very familiar with houses that, almost any new house, 3 stories, are gonna put an elevator in it, but they're not gonna put it to the rooftop. And so, I'm just wondering, again, I say this all the time, it's people are 80 feet from the beach, but they can't go to the beach. They have to go on the rooftop to look at it, and I just don't know how, in a historic district, that's kind of the stuff we want to be encouraged.
This moon deck will provide excellent views of not only the Gulf of Mexico, but the Sunshine Skyway.
Yeah, but you can do that from your 3rd floor window.
Probably.
You can't, no, you can't. I'm just saying, so, all right. Anybody else have any questions or anything? All right, anything else you'd like to tell us, Mr. Wilson?
No.
Okay, thank you, sir, very much.
Thank you.
Can I ask staff a question real quick?
Sure.
Kristen, even though this is within a foot, it is going to the Board of Adjustment?
It is, because it does not qualify for administrative, if that's kind of where you're going.
I am.
That doesn't include height.
Thank you.
Do we make a recommendation to the Board of
Correct.
Adjustment?
Yes.
You do.
And
Which we will notify them on February 28th.
Yes, and it will also be included in my staff findings report.
You can make a motion with conditions, without conditions, motion to approve, motion to deny. The floor is yours.
And any reasoning as
Yeah, but
to why as well.
This is a
would be great.
motion on the recommendation, yeah, obviously, right.
So,
Yeah,
We're
no,
not-
I'm
We're
just
not
saying,
approving or denying anything, we're just
Yeah.
making a recommendation,
Right.
correct?
Correct.
what would you like the Board of Adjustment to do,
correct. I'm just meant when we
and why?
use the words for the motion. Does anybody have a motion?
I have another question I wanted to ask.
Yeah.
The first living level, trying to read the plans, goes from 14.41 at the top of the hollow core slab to 24.1 top of the wall, on the top of the wall, I believe is what it says. It's very hard to reach. Second. I don't know why it says second something.
Are you looking at the front elevation or?
Yeah, front and rear elevation. Page 19.
Okay. I'm disconnected.
And that would make, 9.5 feet in that section. Yes, it's just 8 feet on the top, on the second living level, or just over 8 feet. But just trying to find 11 inches in the structure.
All right, well, I'll make a motion. I make a motion that we recommend denying the variance, and the reasons being that, that it's a empty lot, that the hardship has been created by the property builder themselves, that there's ways they can modify their plans to take those 11 inches. It's the, away, it's the principle of the matter. It's also taking us down a path where we're concerned that exceptions become the rule. And in today's age where it seems like there's going to be more people that want to put elevators up to the rooftop, this is probably just the beginning of some of these issues. And I think at this stage, early on, because it's in a historic district where height is of such importance, that the variance be denied.
I would second that motion.
Roll call, please.
Member Hawkinsmith?
Approved motion.
Member Daschle?
Yes.
Member Hurley?
Approve.
Member Young?
Yes.
Chair Lowry?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you very much for your recommendation.
Thank you, Kristen.
Oh, sorry.
Okay, so now we're on to discussion items.
There was an order, I think.
There's what?
There was an order to this. I think it was some announcements,
Yes.
some announcements, garbage, and then workshop.
Okay, so I think Member Hawkinsmith had some announcements she wanted to make first.
So Gulf Beach's Historic Museum is hosting Island Festival on Saturday, March 23rd from 11 to 4 on 10th Avenue in front of the museum. So add that to your calendar, and you can find out the information on their website or on their Facebook page. And then also a fundraiser for Gulf Beach's Historic Museum is a Galentine event on Tuesday, February 13th at the Dewey, and it's a cookie decorating, charcuterie, and champagne party.
Can I be so bold to ask what Galentine means? Oh, I get it, Valentine, Galentine.
It's for your girlfriends.
Gals, the gal pals.
Yeah, I know I'm married, I don't have to think about stuff anymore.
Oh, it's women only?
Yeah, well, you can come.
Yeah.
You could be one of the gals.
Mostly.
I never knew. Yeah, Galentine makes sense. Gals.
Didn't you ever watch Parks and Rec?
I didn't see that episode.
Lovely.
Okay, will there be face painting? No, go ahead. So, and then, okay, so I think,
Yes.
Member Deschelle, you have some announcements as well?
Yes, so super exciting in our little area is we've got 808 Pastor Girl Way, which just opened as the Pastor Girl General Store, and they're officially open now. And I've gone almost every day that they've been officially open and have bought gourmet chocolate, probably too much, chocolate-covered cashews that are addictive. I bought a lamp, so it's got a little bit of everything, but it's so great to see that historic home living its best life and just really being loved and getting great attention. So they're open and operating, and the only days that they're closed are Tuesday, Wednesday, but open every other day of the week, and it's from, I believe, 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. And they're great to get Galentine gifts, too, and Valentine.
All right. Garbage pickup, is that where we're at next?
That's
Sure.
And let me, I know I sent an email about that. And the reason I want to just kind of find out what's going on, and this is not a request like for Mike Clark to be here. I just want to know from the city if we know anything, because it's really been 3 months since we've met. So I'm just trying to get a feel for what's happened, because I've been to some of the commission meetings, and the last time I think we talked about it was early December. So that was, 2 months ago. And so can anybody from the city just kind of give me an update?
I can start from my point of view. It's actually on the February 13th City Commission meeting
As what?
as an update.
Okay.
So I haven't been involved with the meetings with Mike and Wayne, but
And that hasn't been put out on the internet yet.
No, the agenda gets,
Yeah.
we actually had 3 weeks before meetings because of January. So the agenda will be finalized on the 8th.
Okay, well, that,
But there's going to be a discussion item, and I'm looking forward to it because I don't
On
have
that
it.
date.
Yeah, on the 13th itself at the commission meeting, there will be a kind of similar to last time.
Yep.
Chair Lowry.
okay, excellent. That's all I wanted to know, really.
Yeah.
So you can stop by cookie making after that commission meeting.
Oh, is that Valentine's Day?
Is it? Am I invited?
It's Valentine's Day.
You sure? Sure. I don't want to blow up the party or
What
anything.
time does that start?
Valentine's?
I know, I saw it on Facebook. And I was like, commission meeting night.
We're at
We'll just make commission meeting.
5:30, 5:30 to 9, so we'll be there a while.
Have you seen these commission meetings? They last just a little longer than that.
That's a Tuesday night meeting?
So what I will do, because that's what I heard today, but if something changes, I will email you, because since the agenda, I haven't seen the draft yet.
Yeah, gotcha.
But I've been told it's the 13th so that you can let everyone know.
Just make sure that when people make garbage there, they take it out the back.
We're gonna take our
And they
own
put it on the
trash.
front, on the sidewalk to be picked up.
Valentine's is a take out your own trash event.
Oh, okay.
Nice.
How appropriate.
Just like every other day.
Taking out your
No.
trash, isn't that like
The Dewey's
dating?
actually usually closed on Tuesdays, so it's just open for our event.
So, on the garbage pickup stuff, I would just
Yeah.
like to throw this out there, just since you're involved in some of this stuff, that I do believe there's a lot of citizens that would volunteer to clean some of these areas up, the vegetation areas. So it's never really been, I think, so much a request for the city to have to do all this, or the city to have to survey everything. There are certain areas, certain pinch points, but there's very few of those. So I just point that out when we come to a solution, so it's in some, there's never really been an opportunity much to talk about it, where it always seems to be, it's like, well, the city has to go out and do all this stuff, and that's not quite where it has to be, because there are a lot of people that are interested in helping.
That's good to know, and I know you've been kind
said
of
it
staying
at the commission
informed.
meeting.
Yeah, but are you like the lead? Like, are you?
Not necessarily, but I'm in contact with a few people that, like, for example, I don't even have Nextdoor. I refuse to be on that thing.
Smart
okay?
move.
Yeah, so there's other people that have that network a little bit more, but I've talked to enough people that have said they would, and I
Okay.
think there's volunteers that would go to other areas, and so I think that was one of the questions that's probably going to
Yeah.
be answered, is what's kind of private and what's public and what can be done. This is more on the vegetation issues then. I mean, the power poles is a whole different problem. I think there's maybe really 2 or 3 of those problems, if even that.
Well, and even the fences, I went over there. They're not. I don't know. They're not as bad as I initially thought.
I mean, I still don't know how wide a garbage truck is. I've
Can't say that
asked
I
that
do
way
either.
back long ago, so you could kind of figure out how much space do they really need, but.
Ooh, we have trash pickup tomorrow. I can measure it.
Let's go out there with the measurements.
I will. I'll
Hold
go-
still, right?
Yeah.
Real quick.
Because I'd also heard that there had been an approval to allow garbage between 9th and 8th, behind the Seahorse. But that hasn't happened. I mean, supposedly that was an agreement with,
Do you remember when that meeting was?
no, because that would have been more it was brought up at that meeting, I think. I think the
It was
last
prior
time-
commission.
The last time we had it was the 5th, I believe,
Of December.
of December. That's
Okay.
where the conversation
All right.
occurred. And I believe at that time, some of the commercial establishments who particularly had problems getting their garbage, because they're built wall to wall, that there had been an agreement that they would go ahead and go down 8th Avenue, which is plenty wide, not 8th Avenue, between 9th and 8th, between the Seahorse, and they would pick up there, but they haven't. So it seems to me there could be some spot fixes for some of these people that are in particular bad situations. But great, okay, so we're going to hear, and
It's on the agenda.
excellent.
It is?
You
Yeah,
just looked it up?
no information, but it's on.
Okay, good,
Cool.
perfect.
It's a good way to spend pre-Valentine's Day.
Tell you what, I'll go with you to the Galentine event.
Awesome.
Just show up hand in hand.
All right, so now I guess we're now to the workshop. So since we did some nice wheel spinning today, which is mostly me, could we just meet the same thing in the early of the afternoon for in the next meeting we have? I don't know what everyone else's
March
issues
7th.
might be. That seems the simplest thing, isn't it?
I would agree.
Yep.
Like before, like we did today?
Yeah.
Does everyone like a 2:30 start time?
Yes.
2:30 is fine.
Okay.
Are we sure it's on the 7th?
Yep. We just gotta make sure Tara can probably
Yeah.
be there.
Yeah. Okay. That was easy enough. Well, if Tara is not available, do we automatically cancel it?
We doodle poll it. and-
Or we could doodle poll. That's true. We could send you guys an email. I just think that
I would generally say yes, you know what I mean, because I think she is the key holder of a lot of this stuff, and
Couldn't
it's
agree
so
more.
much more smoother.
Yep.
I mean, you know,
I'm just kidding.
Good job, Matthew.
I'm not a planner.
I mean, I suppose
Are you
we
feeling
could.
the
we
love
could-
right now?
No offense
we could-
taken.
I think we sent a poll, because maybe a situation, maybe we'd meet at 3:30 and talk for half an hour or something, if she's not available.
Well, let's while we're on that subject though, let's set some parameters if we may. Because we went through majority of Division 40. I guess there's, I think, a page and a half left. So is the idea to pick up where we left off?
I think the idea, well, sorry, we had some questions for what we went through for her to clear
Okay,
up
to clear up.
some of the
And
definitions.
then just kind of
and
provide an
things like that.
update and then
Yeah.
decide where we go from there. Because I think she's getting to the point now where once we have this workshop, it's going to be putting something in form,
Yeah, no, I think,
which is already kind of is, but cleaning up some things. Are you going to want to see it one more time?
probably. You mean as in a workshop?
I almost think if you're ready for it after March 7th, then we either do like a joint workshop with the commission or we add it as an agenda and you take action on it.
I think a joint workshop before they go to commission meeting.
Yes, in the joint workshop, you're talking about having the commission
Yeah,
here.
yeah.
Because,
It's a lot to do at a commission meeting.
yes, and there's a lot of background, so unless someone's gonna like prepare a report to explain to them the reasons for doing all this stuff, which would be,
Well, you have good writing skills. I mean,
man, yeah, that would be great.
okay.
Would you
So
think?
we'll shoot for March 7th and then maybe I'll talk to Amber. We can do some kind of joint workshop. But let's get through March 7th
Yeah,
first
yeah,
and then we can
right.
approach. Okay, that's clear for me. Thank you.
Anybody have anything else?
Oh, I have a question.
Go ahead.
Sorry, one more question. And it's, maybe we can have the answer to that, when our terms expire and when I know we have like
It's a good question. So,
the chair and vice chair is like on the March agenda, right? Which is our next meeting.
so
but
what's,
when each of
it
our,
won't happen by your next meeting though. It'll actually happen by, because the election is, they get sworn in second meeting in March. So what the clerk's office does is, once we have, technically the commission as it sits right now will not change, because there's only one person running for each district. But they will have the ability to reappoint
right?
board members. And that will take place after the election.
Right. Because that's all dependent in it. I mean,
Well, things have kind of changed to where District 1 and 3 are running unopposed. So the players involved will not change. But that's usually what we wait. We wait for the swearing in and then we approach the new commission with board members.
so is it just, so since, in my situation, since I was the mayor's appointment, nothing changes until,
You're here for, I think he has 2 more years.
yeah, whatever that, okay.
I think my term is up in '24
You were whose?
for Slawski.
Correct. So then, but if you all show, I mean, we're filling vacancies right now because there has been some vacancies. Like we're looking for one on the planning board, so let your friends and neighbors know.
I would just reach out to Betty.
She and I have spoken.
Yeah.
Okay.
But if you have an interest in staying, then I would just let the current commissioner know.
But does it work, if a commissioner is replaced, does that automatically create a time issue for whoever their appointee was? So like Danielle, who just recently appointed, shouldn't have to be reappointed by the new commissioner, does she?
She does not.
Does not, okay.
So while commissioners run on terms, in my opinion, you all just run until they either make a change or they don't, or you decide to resign. All right, so I mean, technically at any given meeting, one of you could be replaced. Not to be rude, but
No, the commissioner could,
the commissioner could
we
just,
serve at the pleasure of the commissioner.
essentially, yeah, I just want to be straight with you all. But I wouldn't see it as terms, because a lot of the times the same board members, they don't like to disrupt things, and people just kind of, so you could be here for 6 years.
Oh, boy.
Okay, going once, twice.
Don't say that out loud.